What if an appliance emergency didn't have to be? If your appliances suddenly decided they were done, don't stress. Best Buy has you covered with a wide variety of major appliances from trusted brands, in stock and available now. So you don't have to worry about laundry piling up, refilling the fridge, or that big dinner party you're hosting. Because Best Buy has the knowledge and expertise to get you the right appliance for your home. Learn more at bestbuy.com. Best Buy. Imagine that.
Welcome back to another edition of the Disney Dish Podcast. It is me, Jim Hill, and this is our show for the week of Schmurz Day, January 12th. January 12th, by the way, just in case you're wondering, is National Pharmacist Day, National Kiss a Ginger Day, and National Clean Off Your Desk Day. Also National Curry Chicken Day. But in all of my research, I couldn't find anything related to January 12th that then ties in with mind reading, which is a shame, because filling in for Len Testa this week is mind reader Chris Cox, who is, of course, the co-host of that new comedy podcast that Mr. Testa and I have recently begun doing, the Case 4 with Chris Cox. So welcome to today's show, Chris.
Hi, Jim. Very happy to be here. And by the way, if it's any consolation, I did recently clean a bit of curried chicken off my desk. Made a great tikka masala, spilt some of it. That was a good working lunch, though.
Yeah, gotta love a man who can multitask.
Quick question. Where is Mr. Testa? Where's Len?
Well, he's somewhere on the high seas, or at least that was what Len told me. He was headed out the door last week.
Not massively specific.
I to be honest, I wasn't really paying all that close attention to what he was saying. So there are other possibilities here. I mean, for all I know, Len could be going someplace where he could drink high C, or he could be going someplace where he would then sing a high C.
All right, if it's that one, just let me know, because I have friends in the opera circles.
Oh, that's right. You were mentioning on the most recent Case 4 with Chris Cox that you had performed at the Sydney Opera House. Is that correct?
Yes, I have performed at the Sydney Opera House. I don't like to brag. Also, Broadway, London's West End, a record-breaking 4 times, the Kennedy Centre, multiple US tours, and to around 1 million people around the world. But again, I don't like to brag.
Wow. But you do it so well. All right. Well.
Anyway, look, if Len ends up in Sydney singing an aria, I'm going to get my friends from Down Under to give us the heads up. I'll ask Bluey, Bingo, Bandit, and Chili. I'll get all the koalas on it. We will know if he is singing opera or any high notes, be it a C or otherwise.
There we go. All right. And by the way, folks, just in case you don't know, you are in very good hands this week. Mr. Cox is a show business professional. You may have noticed that from the not bragging he just did. But also worth noting.
I don't like to brag.
He doesn't like to brag. But at the same time, this is a man who's traveled the globe. In fact, am I correct in saying this, that you have managed to make it to every single Disney park except Shanghai?
Yes, your dossier is correct. Shanghai is next on the list at some point. Maybe next year, I think. Fingers crossed.
Okay, cool.
Actually, it's a good job I've been to all those theme parks, because am I right in thinking this week's big feature is going to be all about the theme parks, obviously, but specifically the Disneyland in Anaheim, focusing on the Sleeping Beauty castle roof. Is that right? And also, if that is right, is that why Len opted to get out of town, says he didn't want to hear any more stories about squirrel-shaped gutters?
This is actually a very interesting topic. And yes, it does involve squirrel-shaped gutters, but also enormous crowns and tons of fake jewelry, which then actually damages Sleeping Beauty Castle, forcing Disneyland to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on roof repairs. But we'll get to that.
Yeah, I don't think Sleeping Beauty can get homeowners insurance, right? It doesn't work out.
She dozes, nods off while they're filling out the forms. It's a terrible story. Anyway, we'll touch on that, plus listener questions, not to mention what happens when an 800-pound boulder in the Indiana Jones Epic Stunt Spectacular decides to, well, not just go off script, but also off track. But we first have to thank everyone who subscribes on patreon.com Jim Hill Media, which includes Beverly B, Nicholas T, Edward F, Crispy, and the oddly all-encompassing name everyone who subscribes to the show. That pretty much covers the boardwalk. Anyway, these are the poor folks who, after Dinosaur the Ride officially closes on February 2nd, they have the unenviable task of having to rehome the 12 animatronic dinosaurs that have resided in this corner of Disney's Animal Kingdom for the past 27 years. And just in case you're wondering, Chris, that then makes these dinosaurs senior animals, which means that they now all have special needs and quirks toward that end. The iguanodon, the one that rescues you at the end of the ride, well, he likes a mix of half wet and half dry food. And whereas the Carnotaurus, he's the dinosaur that tries to eat you several times during the ride, well, he won't go to sleep at night without a belly rub.
Quick question. He's the one that tries to eat you, so belly rub from inside or outside the belly?
You know, the documentation here is unclear. But folks, if you have room in your heart, more importantly, your garage, for a multi-ton mechanical carnivore who, by the way, answers to the name Susie Q.
Susie Q?
Well,
really?
As I so often say to Mr. Testa, the things I learned in this part of the show. Anyway, if you're interested in rehoming any of these senior beasts, well, please reach out to Beverly, Nicholas, Edward, Chris, and, well, everyone.
By the way, Senior Beasts is some sort of ice hockey team I'd go and watch.
As I would as well. Before we formally get started here, we also have to remind folks that the news portion of Disney Dish is sponsored by UnlockMagic.com. And are you heading down to Central Florida anytime soon? Perhaps to check out the Festival of the Arts, which gets underway at Epcot later this week, actually, on January 16th, and then runs through February 23rd. Or perhaps you want to go check out Universal's version of Mardi Gras, which is themed around the international flavors of Carnival. For 2026. That runs February 7th through April 4th. If so, UnlockMagic.com can get you some pretty significant savings when it comes to your admissions media for these theme parks. Sometimes as high as 12% off. So just pick your dates, grab your tickets, and go. Unlock Magic makes it that easy. And when you get your tickets, please tell the nice folks at UnlockMagic.com that it was Chris and it was Jim who sent you. All right, so now, news portion of this week's show. Chris, as you not bragged at the top of the show, you're somebody who's logged a lot of stage time. You performed.
Jim, I don't like to talk about it. Broadway, don't like to talk about it. US Tour, Sydney Opera House, West End, Dubai Opera, don't like to talk about it.
Very skilled, the subtle promotion. But again, you performed on stage at London West End and on Broadway and lots of prestigious venues.
I have, but again, I don't like to talk about it.
There we go. But here's the thing. You have to have been on stage at some point in your career when something that is usually reliable suddenly goes south. An illusion or a bit that previously was worked suddenly goes sideways.
Oh, so many times. I mean, part of the secret of sort of doing what I do is both having multiple outs of knowing like, well, stuff's going to go wrong and how am I going to deal with that when it goes wrong? But also remembering, here's a big showbiz secret. You kind of remember that no one knows what's meant to happen. So if something doesn't happen, if you sort of confidently breeze your way through it, no one really spots it a lot of the time.
Wow. That actually sounds a lot like most of my adult life. Anyway, I have to ask, did you ever, when you were ever on stage, did you ever have anything that weighed 400 pounds suddenly decide to misbehave?
Not yet, but I haven't done a vanishing elephant trick like Houdini, although it is on my to-do list.
Oh, have you ever read Jim Steinmeier's book?
Yes.
The Vanishing Elephant?
It is a wonderful book.
Absolutely.
And Jim Steinmeier, for anyone, by the way, he's an incredible illusion designer. He's designed lots of illusions for Disney theatrical productions and for David Copperfield. And that book is a really accessible book, which kind of explains the thinking behind magic, some of the methodology. But it's just a great read. It's such a good story.
Oh, no. Absolutely. I've got all of the books that Steinmeier's written over the years. And again, you're right. Just for the transformational illusion alone in Beauty and the Beast, Jim is right up there. But, again, folks, we're obviously talking about the incident that happened at the Epic Stunt Spectacular at Disney's Hollywood Studios last week. You heard about this, Chris?
Yeah, I did see all of this.
Okay. And just to be clear here, folks, our understanding is it happened at the second performance on the morning of Tuesday, December 30th.
So that means there was a morning show, so they'd have done it fine in the first show before that, and obviously they'd have tested everything before they even started the shows and probably run those things.
That's it, exactly. So what wound up happening here, folks, so for those of you who haven't seen the video, which has been everywhere, basically it's that moment at the top of the show where they're recreating the memorable opening from Raiders of the Lost Ark, where Indy, there's a golden idol on the pedestal, and Indy takes the bag of sand and swaps it, and then the pedestal begins to sink into the ground, and the temple starts to fall apart around Indy. And as he goes to make his escape, the giant ball comes rolling down the hill at him. We've all seen the movie, we've all seen the show. What happened this time around is that the ball, I want to say just after it gets started down the track, suddenly sort of bounces out and heads toward the audience. And to the credit, a very brave member of the stage crew steps in the way of that. And yes, it's a giant rubber ball, folks, but it also weighs 400 pounds. And between the momentum, it knocks this guy off his feet. You saw that, right?
Yeah, it was the poor guy. Like, luckily, he was there to stop everyone, and fell over straight away.
Yeah, and now, mind you, that most of the clips that are out there of this end at that moment. Longer versions show actually, other members of the stage crew running over, helping this guy to his feet, and sort of reassuring the audience that okay, that wasn't supposed to happen, but he's okay. And then, out of abundance of caution, they throw this guy in a car, they drive him over to Celebration Hospital, where he gets checked out, and I think he comes away with 6 stitches, which I want to stress here is typically what I get when I'm deboning a turkey, so not a giant injury. That said, this enters interesting territory now because Disney, rightly so, has a reputation for safety. They take these matters very, very seriously. And so when the show came back online the next day, the Boulder was nowhere to be seen in the show, which makes for a somewhat lame ending to the temple falling apart scene.
Now, actually, Jim, when the show first opened at MGM Studios, as it was then, am I right in thinking it opened, but they were in technical rehearsals, which these days kind of shows called previews as well. So it didn't officially open until August of the year, and it originally opened May 1st, 1989, I think, based on the internet. But I think, despite this, the Boulder wasn't in it at the beginning, right?
Well, what was interesting, I was actually there for the press opening of MGM early. In fact, what was so bizarre was that they showed us, I want to say they showed us the Boulder scene, and they gave us a little bit of the street scene, and then they showed us a little bit of the plane thing. And then it was mostly Steven Spielberg and George Lucas talking about how, and this is what's so bizarre, people forget this about, when the park opened in 1989, The Last Crusade hadn't opened in theaters yet. And, that was one of the questions that George and Stephen got, were like, will we see any, stunt scenes or that sort of thing from the new Indy? And they were like, gee, I don't know. We'll have to talk to Disney. But you're right. They technically were in rehearsal right up. In fact, the first 4 months of the park, when you went into the Epic Stunt Spectacular, you were told, you're watching a rehearsal, folks, and we will periodically stop this because something isn't working and we want to circle back on it. So, but yeah, they didn't have the show up and running really till, Labor Day of that year. But again, Disney takes these sorts of incidences very seriously. So I've been told by friends at the park that there is an investigation underway right now. And, early on, there was some suggestion that maybe it was the pedestal in the show that hadn't retracted fully. But it turns out that the ball bounces out of the track like 20 feet before that. And by the way, I also want to stress here, folks, you can go online and there is video from as early as the 80s and the 90s of the ball doing this previously. It's a quirky performer. It will go for thousands of performances of never doing this, and then suddenly it will come out of the track. On mornings when it's happened, the folks at the studio noticed that, well, it was pretty humid today and it was kind of dewy, so maybe we needed to wipe it down. But what has changed this time around, of course, is social media. This image is everywhere. So we're just going to have to see what happens going forward here. And Disney tends to err on the side of caution in situations like this. So, it could be a while or it could be never when we next see the ball come rolling, cracking open that face and rolling down at ending. But again, which is a shame because again, the ball, that's an iconic moment from Raiders, and it was a fun moment in the show. And speaking of iconic moments, something that animation fans remember from Disney's Sword in the Stone is that moment where Wart, when he's frantic to find a replacement for, a replacement sword for Sir Kay, who's, so he's running through the city of London and he sees this, sword sticking out of an anvil in the middle of the city square, and when he finally manages to pull the sword, the stone, he becomes the right wise king of England. That's not how they do it anymore, right? I mean,
No. Now it's just a butter knife out of a pebble.
Okay. Well, that's convenient.
The economy's not what it was, so we can't quite get the swords anymore, or the stones. Turns out they're expensive.
There we go. All right. Well, speaking of this, though, Christopher S. wrote in this past week and asked that, could you please, talk about the history of the Sword and the Stone ceremony at the Disney parks on a future Disney dish? And I got to say that sounds like a fun idea for a future feature. Now, mind you, they haven't done this at Walt Disney World since 2006. So I have to assume that your girls haven't gotten to do it, at least not in Orlando. But don't they also do it at Disneyland Paris?
Yeah, I remember seeing it as a child when we first kind of visited Magic Kingdom and never getting to pull the sword out, but remember watching kind of a ceremony and the performance they used to do. When we were there about a year or so ago, I remember at one point the girls were on the carousel and I was taking photos of them and realized that no one was at the Sword of the Stone and there was a photo pass person there. So got some photos of me on it and then was chastised by them for not getting more photos of them on the carousel. But it didn't pull out for me. I was very worried it might pull out for me at that point. All of a sudden, it was like, oh, no one's watching. But they've not seen the full celebration. And in Paris, I'm not sure whether they've got it. I can't remember ever seeing it. I definitely remember seeing the dragon under the castle, which I feel like maybe there is instead. But no, there must be a Sword and Stone as you go through to Fantasyland there.
I want to say yes. And well, again, one of the reasons I bring up this topic on today's show, the late, great Jim Corcus, by the way, it'll be 3 years this July since we lost that amazing Disney historian, and I still miss that guy. But anyway, when Jim Corcus, when he came to Orlando in the mid to late 90s, for a time, Chris, he actually played Merlin in the Magic Kingdom before he then went over to the Disney Institute and taught classes about Disney animation. And one time, Mr. Corcus when he was in his cups, revealed to me the entire Sword in the Stone ceremony, how it worked. And what was fascinating, I always thought, me personally, it's like, well, Merlin's got a bag, and Merlin must reach into the bag and have the equivalent of a clicker, a television remote control. And it's like, no, not at all. To hear, Mr. Corcus talk, it was always the eye in the sky.
Ah, yes, the original prototype for the drone, I believe.
Well, would that it were that, but not nearly that sophisticated. Evidently, if when the Sword in the Stone ceremony was happening, if you then turned around and sort of scanned the rooftops of Fantasyland, you'd eventually spy a cast member sort of lurking in a window. And what was interesting is that, yes, this was a remote controlled show, but not so much a TV clicker, but more of a garage door opener.
Because it is actually a garage door opener, or as I would say, a garage door opener, or behaves like one, like press it and opens?
There we go. And but evidently it was always the eye in the sky, that cast member, who decided who then got to experience the Sword in the Stone, rising out of the stone. And
this is so Merlin couldn't be bribed. I understand.
There we go. And by the way, sort of the understanding was it was always going to be a little boy or a little girl. On the other hand, if there were a particularly attractive young woman with a low top who would excitedly jump up and down if she pulled up the sword, that was also an option, according to Mr. Corcus.
I love that. I probably saw, in that memory I have of seeing it, I probably saw Mr. Corcus do it. I have a memory of him. No memory of kind of girls in low tops getting the sword out, but definitely him.
There we go. And what Jim especially loved about playing Merlin is, at least back in the day, and by the way, this started in Orlando, I want to say in 93, and that's almost a full 10 years after. The Sword in the Stone ceremony came into existence after New Fantasyland opened at Disneyland out in California in the mid 1980s. But
also about 10 years.
There we go. But what Jim especially loved about this was that back in the day, if you did pull the sword out of the stone, Merlin would immediately turn and reach into his bag, and they actually had this lovely, no other way to describe it. It's a medal, on a purple ribbon. And in fact, it was, again, this was back when Disney would spend money for things for guests. It was embossed on one side with an image of Wart pulling the sword out of the stone, and the other side included, an acknowledgement to the effect of, you are temporarily the king of Fantasyland.
Much better to give a child a medal than a sword to walk around with all day.
There we go. But anyway, as we mentioned earlier on in today's show, that got discontinued, in fact, August of 2006. And it's another one of those things where I really wish they'd bring that back in the park. It was fun. And speaking of things that are, not discontinued, but I guess being curtailed. Jerry A. wrote in this week to let us know that the Atlantic Dance Hall at Disney's Boardwalk will be shifting to a 3-night operating schedule, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday evenings. In fact, beginning on January 11th, so the day before, the day before this podcast post. And Jerry goes on to note that these days, the Atlantic Ballroom, or the Atlantic Dance Hall, mostly has DJ entertainment and is kind of dependent on convention activity. But he then goes on to say that most of us have noticed that since Big River and then Jelly Rolls is closed, it has had an impact. That this end of the boardwalk has become something of a morgue. And Jerry goes on to say, that he's hoping that this opens up the calendar to more convention activity at the club, because it's a great venue for conventions. And me personally, I'm sad to see this venue cutting back on its operating schedule. I mean, the Atlantic Dance Hall has been a boardwalk stalwart since that resort first opened July of '96. So what, 30 years ago this year. Any memories at all of that venue, Chris?
I've walked past it many times. One time I stayed in Yachton Beach Club and had a lovely view of it, I think, but sadly never went in. Hopefully I will get a chance at some point.
Okay. This is a topic, we should discuss, clubs that we don't go into, on an upcoming episode of The Case For. What's kind of interesting is we did have somebody reach out about our most recent episode. The one where you and Len discussed, whether or not it was worth it to do New Year's Eve at any of the Disney parks. And Claudia R. wrote in to say that the only time I've ever spent in a Disney park on New Year's Eve was when I was working there as part of the international program. And not gonna lie, wasn't my favorite day. Everyone else was having a good time and not listening, not thinking, and making the job harder. Claudia, I guess that day was working crowd control, and she just goes on to say it was tough with the huge crowds and all of the drinking. And then at midnight, she found herself in a very small office counting cash.
Her and Scrooge McDuck there together. Happy New Year, they say to each other, and get back to it.
There we go. However, the next day, Claudia goes on to say, it was awesome. I had an early shift and it was so quiet. It slowly got busier, and people that day were in a far better mood. So much improved from the previous day. So speaking of New Year's, what did you and the family wind up doing this year, Chris?
Well, I am the parent of young children, so as normal, we did not stay up till midnight. We got them a Switch for Christmas, so they've been busy playing Mario Kart, and we watched the Mario movie, which they hadn't seen before. So we watched Super Mario movie, then we watched a live broadcast of the fireworks from Dubai as they celebrated the New Year that a friend of mine was working on. They're spectacular, by the way, if you get a chance to see them. And then said Happy New Year to the girls and sent them off to bed. And before midnight, we were in bed as well.
Wow.
How about you?
Nancy and I, forgive the adult language folks, are old farts. Our New Year's tame doesn't even begin to describe it. We ate takeout Chinese. We struggled to stay awake till midnight to watch the ball drop in Times Square. And speaking of big, heavy things landing on roofs, when we get back from this break, Chris and I will talk about how Disneyland learned the hard way that there is such a thing as too many decorations. More to the point, how the glitter and the glitz that were placed on Sleeping Beauty Castle back in 2015 for that theme park's 60th anniversary celebration actually resulted in a very expensive roof repair. But first, this.
Why do growing businesses love working in Slack? Let's ask Christy at RE Bikes.
Running things in Slack saves me so much time.
AI summaries save 97 minutes per week. What say you, Rox from Gosney?
Slack helps us build community, it helps us build connection.
Your partners, vendors and customers all in one place. Take us on home, Ashley from Caraway.
If we didn't have Slack tomorrow, I would explode.
Well, let's not let that happen. Visit slack.com/podcast to get 50% off Slack Business Plus.
Does it ever feel like you're a marketing professional just speaking into the void? But with LinkedIn ads, you can know you're reaching the right decision makers, a network of 130 million of them, in fact. You can even target buyers by job title, industry, company, seniority, skills, and did I say job title? See how you can avoid the void and reach the right buyers with LinkedIn ads. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a free $250 credit for the next one. Get started at linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
Hi, I'm Jim. I'm not an actor, just a guy living with prostate cancer. My wife and I face each day head on. We asked my doctor about Xtandi enzalutamide.
Xtandi 40 milligram tablets treats men with prostate cancer that has spread to other parts of the body and responds to a medical or surgical treatment to lower testosterone. Xtandi may cause serious side effects: seizure, a brain condition called PRESS, allergic reactions, heart disease that can lead to death, falls and bone fractures, swallowing problems, or choking that can lead to death. Stop Xtandi and get medical help at once if your face, tongue, lip, or throat start swelling. Tell your doctor at once if you faint, have a seizure, quickly worsening headache, decreased alertness, confusion, vision problems, chest pain or discomfort, or shortness of breath. Xtandi can cause harm to an unborn baby or miscarriage. Use birth control during and 3 months after Xtandi. Common side effects include muscle and joint pain, feeling unusually tired, hot flashes, constipation, less appetite, diarrhea, high blood pressure, bleeding, falls, fractures, and headache.
Visit Xtandi.com to watch my story.
And we're back. Okay, Chris, before we get started here, just want to sort of touch base on last week's show where we were talking about Imagineer Kim Irvine. Did you get to hear that story? Or
Yeah, she was the first Imagineer to be directly assigned to Disneyland, right?
There we go. A lovely woman, by the way. And again, and it was a unique assignment because I want to say in 84 or thereabouts, just before Disneyland's 30th anniversary, Kim was assigned to that park to, on literally to be boots on the ground, day in, day out, with the notion of, well, what is it Mickey used to say at the top of the Mickey Mouse Club? Everybody neat and pretty. Which this is the thing, folks. That's a lot harder to do when you're in charge of a 51-acre park where tens of thousands of people are marching through it every day. More to the point, you built it in Southern California where the sun is, blazing down and bleaching all the paint that you regularly have to touch up. So Kim gets this assignment in the early 80s. If we jump ahead to the 90s, especially to be particular, 1994, Kim is facing an interesting task, which is that the very next year, Disneyland will be celebrating its 40th. And do you know anything about that particular celebration at the park, Chris?
No, I know nothing about that one, so enlighten me, please, Jim.
All right. Well, it is, face it, 40 is not, an anniversary that normally people get excited about.
Yeah, 40s, welcome to middle age, enjoy back problems.
There we go. There we go. And that was the thing. Disney was kind of struggling to come up with a hook for the park's 40th anniversary. So they came up with this conceit of, you know what we'll do to celebrate Disneyland's 40th? We will create a time castle. And I didn't mispronounce that, folks. I didn't mean to say time capsule. I said time castle. They in fact, you can go online and find pictures of this. It is a...
Hold on. Did they put Sleeping Beauty's castle in a big time capsule? They just covered it up. You don't see anything. It's just in a capsule for the year.
Well,
that's what I'm going to see pictures of.
Actually, you're going to see the convenient travel-sized version of Sleeping Beauty Castle. I want to say it's 2.5, 3 feet tall, made out of metal. I mean, it is a likeness of of that structure, and but the conceit was they were going to put things inside of it that was significant for the 40th year of Disneyland. So, for example, they put a decoder card in there for the hieroglyphics inside of Indiana Jones' adventure ride. They also put the name tag for cast members wore that year, which was emblazoned with the catchphrase, 40 years of adventure. But here's the thing, Kim is like, all right, so where are you going to do this? Okay, you're going to do it. You're going to dig a hole in front of the castle. right at the edge of the hub, just beyond the drawbridge. And then you're going to hold this ceremony where you lower the time castle into the ground, where it will then sit for 40 years, Chris, to be opened in the far off, distant year, 2035, which is 5 minutes from now, right?
Yeah, just after the next ad break.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of these things where once upon a time, 40 years ago, 40 years was a long time.
The whole concept of time capsules is sort of fascinating these days, isn't it? Because I imagine they were originally invented to be a memory of the past, right? But now the past is more accessible than ever. So you don't need it. You can literally Google that image now.
No, totally. And in fact, the irony here is, by the way, this isn't the only Disney park in California to have a time castle, whatever. When California Adventure, when they reinvented that park, and they actually, June of 2012, when the very last piece of the puzzle was sort of snapped into place, the Buena Vista Street, that recreation of the Hollywood LA that Walt first encountered when he traveled out, to start his career in the 20s. They put a time capsule in place as well. Only that one's only in place for 25 years. So that one, again, opens in the far off distant. Oh, you can barely see it from here, year of 2037. But anyway, so from Kim's point of view, she's like, all right, you're going to do this ceremony in front of the castle. And that means that the world media is going to come out. Hundreds of cameras are going to be pointing at Sleeping Beauty Castle. And it's like, all right, I think I see this as an opportunity. So, and remember, we had talked previously about how Kim had done some work early on in bumping the colors for Sleeping Beauty Castle. In fact, it had taken that building, which was slate gray and beige, which, just to be clear here, that's, Disneyland Castle is based on a real castle in Bavaria, and that's what the castle in Bavaria looked like, those colors. But Kim had bumped the colors a little bit out ahead of Disneyland's 30th. And so here was another opportunity to do that. But at the same time, Kim knew that because Disneyland fans are so passionate, that if she went, too far, they'd riot. So, Chris, you work in show business, so you have dealt with people who step away, disappear for a few weeks and then come back and they look different.
Yeah, suddenly have a new set of hair, maybe.
There we go. In fact, that's the thing. You look at them and it's like, what's different? Did you get a haircut? Did you lose some weight? But that's the thing of great cosmetic surgery, is that you can't tell. You're looking and there's just, and that's the thing. Kim decided that, Disneyland is 40, which is a time where most matrons in Beverly Hills, step away and have a little work done. But that was the thing. It all had to be subtle. It all had to be little details, so the castle itself would look great for its 40th anniversary, but it wouldn't attract attention to itself. It wouldn't take away from the ceremony where Michael Eisner stood there as they lowered the time castle into the ground. And that's what's lovely about, if you go out and Google this ceremony at Disneyland, which, by the way, was held on July 17th, 1995, you can see the lovely castle in the background that and what's fascinating, Chris, is if you even just step back and look, Google a picture for Disneyland for 1990 at the park's 31st anniversary. The change in Sleeping Beauty Castle is startling. But at the same time, when you look at the finished product, it's like, It looks great. I just don't understand why it looks so great.
It's all those tiny touches, right? And over the years, they keep making these little changes and suddenly it looks incredible, but it's slightly different from how it began. And you never really spot that because you went on the journey with it changing.
There we go. Now, that said, though, that here's the thing. The Disney company, in fact, only since, in fact, I want to say the very first time this topic came up was back in 1988 when Disney had a year-long celebration of Mickey's 60th birthday, and then discovered to their horror that, when they did the after-action, surveys and that sort of thing, people were like, wow, Mickey's that old? It was like, oh, no. We don't want our characters to be old. We want our characters to be new because, as Chris mentioned at the top of today's show, just competing with the Blueies of the world, for the affection of the children of today. That's a challenge. So what was interesting in the decades since is we've watched Disney step away from birthdays to these weird moments like, well, for example, in 2018 when Mickey celebrated his 90th or the entire Disney Corporation celebrated its centennial in 2023. And you kept having these PR flacks who were like, Disney or Mickey is 90 years young. At no time do we mention birthdays, and you can't use the word old.
Semantics will sort everything, Jim.
But here's the thing, Kim, at the actual 40th birthday celebration, there in front of the castle, people, after they'd lowered the time capsule into the ground, walked up to her and said, oh, it just, the castle looks so great and it looks so beautiful and you did a great job. And then in the same breath, so what do you got in the works for the 50th?
Oh, 10 years to plan then.
There we go. And and when we get back from this break, we will talk about the challenges that Kim faced when it came to, well, not just the 50th of Disneyland and what to do with the castle, but the 60th and the 70th. But first, this.
Well, the holidays have come and gone once again, but if you've forgotten to get that special someone in your life a gift, well, Mint Mobile is extending their holiday offer of half off unlimited wireless. So here's the idea. You get it now, you call it an early present for next year. What do you have to lose? Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Limited time 50% off regular price for new customers. Upfront payment required. $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan. Taxes and fees extra. Speeds may slow after 50 gigabytes per month when network is busy. See terms.
And we're back. I want to acknowledge before we get back to the feature that Mr. Cox and I, well, in the real world, he and I are recording this podcast on Tuesday morning, Chris's time, Tuesday afternoon, January 6th. There we go, 2026. And what's significant about that, folks, is, well, tomorrow, Wednesday, January 7th, 2026, is the very last day that Sleeping Beauty Castle at Disneyland Park on Anaheim will have its holiday overlay for the 2025 season in place. And Chris, I have to ask, have you ever seen this when they do this out in Anaheim?
I've seen the beautiful photos online. I've only ever been to the Anaheim parks during springtime, which has always been amazing. The greenery and particularly the gardening to the horticulture team, what they do in the park then is beautiful at springtime, but I've never seen it over the festive season.
Well, okay. So we're talking now, folks, about Sleeping Beauty's Winter Castle, or the Wintertime Enchantment at Disneyland.
And am I right in thinking this is where it's covered in load of fairy lights and kind of icicles and snowdrift and kind of glows magically, kind of an Elsa-style glow up?
There we go. You got it in one. All right. And these elaborate sort of decorative pieces began being placed on the Sleeping Beauty Castle for seasonal events and also year-long celebrations. They came into vogue in 2005 with Disneyland's 50th anniversary celebration.
50, is that what? That's the golden anniversary 50?
Thank you. Okay, because that's the thing. If you saw the castle that year, there were all sorts of bits of gold trim and, little bits of gold paint here and there, not to mention lots of royal banners and oversized jewels. But speaking of royal, what really caught people's eyes about this version of the castle were the 5 oversized crowns that were placed on individual turrets of Sleeping Beauty Castle. And the idea here, Chris, was that they'd represent, each of these would represent one decade of the park's history. So,
yes, I've seen photos. There was one with Mickey Mouse's ears.
There we go. That was the one for the first decade of the park.
And then rocket ships?
Well, that was 1960s. They had reimagined Tomorrowland, so rockets.
Yeah, of course. Blue Fairy. What's that? That can't be Pinocchio.
Well, no. Actually, what's interesting about that is that's the Main Street Electrical Parade, and that started park in the 70s. Mm-hmm.
And now that song will be in my head for the rest of the day. And Snakes, Indiana Jones, maybe?
Yeah, well, yeah. This is the decade where we start to see the big thrill rides come into the park. Splash, Star Tours, and again, as you mentioned, Indy.
Oh yeah, wet snakes with stars around it. That would make sense. And then Tinkerbell and the fireworks on the 5th crowd.
That's forward thinking. The future of Disneyland. And by the way, want to stress here, while these giant crowns are being placed on the castle, the lower part of the building isn't being neglected. And again, Kim following up on the paint job that had been done for the 40th. And again, following the advice of her longtime mentor, John Hench, who said, don't be afraid to push the color. In fact, what I love about John is that, he used to joke that, when you looked at the original version of the original paint job for Sleeping Beauty Castle, it's like, that color was picked by an architect. We need to get an art director in here. But anyway, back now to the roof of Sleeping Beauty Castle. That on the heels of the 50th anniversary, and everybody loved that. And again, that year-long celebration of the happiest homecoming on Earth. And the notion was, okay, people like it when we put stuff up on the roof. So, starting in 2007, this is when we get our first iteration of that winter enchantment that Chris and I just talked about. And again, as Chris mentioned, lots of fairy lights, lots of faux icicles, lots of pieces on the roof that sort of look like snowdrifts. And so now we move to the 60th anniversary of Disneyland, 2015. And by the way, 60th anniversary, traditionally the diamond anniversary. So this is when they decide, okay, we're going to cover the roof and the exterior of Sleeping Beauty Castle with hundreds of oversized diamonds, which look spectacular at night, Chris. But
I bet it looked amazing. I knew there was going to be a but. I knew it.
Yeah, well, here's the thing, folks. The 1-2 punch. First, covering the roof of the castle every holiday season for nearly a decade with all of that wintertime enchantment gear, and then going straight into the diamond encrusted look for Sleeping Beauty Castle for, again, Disneyland's 60th. So now, Chris, it's 2016. Actually, late 2016, early 2017. And they are just now getting up on the roof to remove the holiday decorations right after the year-long celebration of the 60th. And as they're removing the pieces, they start to actually look at the roof and are like, oh,
no.
All of this weight of decorative stuff cumulatively over the past decade has done some really serious damage to the roof of Sleeping Beauty Castle.
And that roof wasn't built for this, right? They weren't ever planning to add these extra weights to it.
No. And more to the point, want to stress, folks, that this thing was built back in 54 out of wood and lathe and plaster and fiberglass. None of these, and all of these materials have been exposed to the harsh California sun for decades. So, this is not something, the park can postpone for all that long. So 2018.
Oh, hold on a minute.
Yeah.
Is this when they covered Sleeping Beauty's castle with the big scrim of the castle instead? Because I went to Disneyland 2018. Anri, our youngest, was sort of just turned 1 or something. I was going to do some shows in Reno via LA, and we're like, we've got a day we can go to Disneyland. So we were like, we're going to Disneyland, and all of our friends were like, you're taking your new baby. I'm like, no, we're going to Disneyland. She's just coming with us. But we've got these wonderful photos of us with the castle behind us, but it's covered in this scrim with a beautiful painting of the castle.
That's right. That's actually Herbie Ryman's concept painting, for the castle.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but that's the thing, that that was up to keep the members of the general public from seeing that they ripped the roof off. That in fact, it was a $300,000 repair job. But in the end, got a brand new, far sturdier roof, which can now handle all of the crazy things that when Disneyland decides to put things up on Sleeping Beauty Castle. But anyway, to bring today's story to a close, folks, this is how we wound up. But I should mention that while they were doing that, and in fact, what's interesting about this, Chris, is you got to remember the very next year is when Star Wars Galaxy's Edge opens. And leading up to that, they had Project Stardust, where they made all sorts of changes at the park to make it easier for people to hike from the very front of Disneyland all the way back to Black Spire Outpost. But while they were doing this, Kim took one last opportunity to push the colors of Sleeping Beauty Castle, and and did a lovely update of the colors and the detailing, and that debuts in 2019 along with Galaxy's Edge. But anyway, to bring today's story to a close here, this is how we wound up with that beautiful structure, folks. It sits at the end of Main Street, USA. Mind you, it takes Kim Irvine 6 different tries over 4 different decades. But what we ended up with is a Fairytale castle that just pops with color. And just want to remind you all that Kim Irvine retired from Disney Imagineering this past June after 55 years on the job. And I just have to flat out say, folks, the whole point of this feature, which started on last week's show and concludes right now, was to acknowledge all of the great hard work that Kim put into Walt's Park over all that time to make sure that this place stayed, as Mickey used to say, neat and pretty. So anyway, Kim, on behalf of Mr. Cox and myself, we want to say we hope you enjoy your retirement. You definitely earned it. And thanks again for everything you did during your time on the ground at the original Disneyland. Anyway, folks, on that note, we're going to wrap up this week's edition of Disney Dish. So thanks to Chris Cox for doing such a spectacular job, for filling in for the all-at-sea Len Testa, who, barring any fisticuffs at the duty-free store, should be back in time to host next week's show. And speaking of next week's show, how about for the feature, we talk about the man who deserves to be a Disney legend, but I got to say, the company will never, ever give him that kind of recognition. And we are, of course, talking about Disneyland's very first vice president and general manager, one C.V. Wood. Also, want to remind you folks of Disney Journey. That's Jim Schul's YouTube channel. On his very next video, this veteran Imagineer will be sitting down with the bronze version of Walt Disney, the one that was recently installed at World Celebration, and then asking Walt if this is what he really wanted for Epcot. Beyond that, you can find more of me at Jim Hill Media. And as for you, Chris, which, again, by the way, people should really be listening to our great new comedy podcast, The Case for with Chris Cox, the one that you and I do with Len. But where else can the nice folks find you out in the world?
You can find me on the internet. You can go to magiccox.com. That's MAGICCOX.com. All on all of the socials at Magic Cox on Instagram. The others, you'll find me. Remember, the spelling is COX. Be really careful with that.
There you go. And in closing, folks, I want to note that we are produced spectacularly by Eric Hersey and David Gray, who later this month will be eastbound and down, loaded up and trucking as they haul an 18-wheeler full of quahogs and chowder to the Taste of New England Food Truck Festival, which, oddly enough, is being held on January 31st at the Firefly Distillery, which is located on Sproul Avenue in North Charleston, South Carolina. While Eric and David are doing that, please go to iTunes and rate our show and tell us what you'd like to hear next. And for Len and Chris, this is Jim. Want to thank you for listening, and we will see you on the next show.